Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I wanted to show you how I make a traveler's notebook out of leather. So if you've been following me long enough, you would have seen a couple of traveler's notebooks that I made myself out of leather. The first one being this little A6 TN that I made out of some leather that I got at Michael's. So this is I think the Art Minds or whatever that brand is at Michael's. This is the teal leather here, very soft, and it's a very like floppy sort of leather. But this was the first TN that I made. I actually wanted to try an A6 TN before I bought one. So I kind of made my own, and it has a rear force spine and the stitching, and it has these pockets here that I'm not very fond of now, but then that's what I made. And you would have also seen this TN, which is my B6 Slim that I made out of some veg tan leather. And this one is a bit more complex. This is when I got brave and decided to try my hand at making a B6 Slim, but with like the card pockets. So this one has a pocket here as well, and then the big pocket in the back. And then it has like a wonky pocket here. Like this didn't turn out the way that I wanted, but things can go back there. Like, you know, you can put things there and it will stay. So that was this one. And so I am going to show you how to make sort of like a similar TN to this that I have here, except in a pocket size. So pocket is the smaller TN. It's one of it's like what, Pocket Field Notes. I think those are the notebooks that fit in to it. So it's a bit smaller than, I think it's like the same height, but it's a bit narrower than an A6. And so I have these little notebooks here that I don't think are pocket size, but I think they'll fit well in a pocket TN. Those are the little notebooks that I have for this. I'm actually making this little TN as a gift for someone, so these are the little notebooks that I had, but I thought a pocket size would be good, only because when these notebooks run out, pocket size notebooks are just like the easiest to find. So what you'll need for this DIY project is, of course, your leather. And so I am using this, it's like a rustic French blue leather. That was the color. I get all of my leather from the Leather Guy. That is what the shop is called. You can Google it, the Leather Guy, and it'll come up. They have their own like private hosted website, but they also sell on Etsy. So if you just look up the Leather Guy, you will find the shop that I buy all of my leather from. I will definitely leave a link down below to the shop. But yeah, I get my leather from the Leather Guy, and what I like about the Leather Guy is that you can buy them in sheets, like already pre-cut sheets, and they turn out to be much cheaper than buying like a whole side of leather. The pre-cut sheets come in 12 by 12, 8 by 10, 4 by 6, like in different sizes. And so it's really good if you want to make yourself a traveler's notebook cover. And so that is where I go to get my leather, and it's really good leather, and they have so many beautiful colors. The one thing I will mention about when you are looking for leather to make a cover is the thickness of the leather. Leather thickness goes by ounces. The higher the ounce number, the thicker the leather is. When I look for leathers to buy on the Leather Guy, I always try to get within that 4 ounce range. So if you go and you see the listings, a lot of them will say 3 to 4 ounces or 4 to 5 ounces or 3.5 to 4.5 ounces, stuff like that. I try to get within that 4 ounce range, especially if I don't want pockets and everything, because then it's like a good stiffness. Also, it'll tell you if the grain is smooth, if it's pebbly, or if it's a soft leather or hard leather. Generally, a veg tan leather is very stiff leather, and you do have to condition it to get it like that nice soft feel. But these, I think, are more I think they're more fashion leathers, I think. This one was supposed to be a 3 to 4 ounce, but it's actually it's a very thin, like you can, this is the Michael's one. It's maybe a hair thicker. And these are the same leathers, except one is a different color than the other. I don't know how that happened, but yeah. So I try to keep within the 4-ounce range. If you go thinner than that, so like a 2-ounce or 3-ounce, that is when you would want to start thinking about including pockets into your cover and a reinforced spine, only because the base leather will be a little bit floppy. So this leather, it's not too floppy, but I do want it to have some sort of stiffness to it. So I am going to do a reinforced spine, and I am going to do pockets. So here I'm going to do sort of like a card pocket, and in the back I'm just going to do a pocket like this so that it just kind of, you can tuck stuff in there. And so that is the leather. The next thing that you'll need if you're going to cut like a piece of leather down to size, I like a rotary cutter. I got this one off of Michael's. So this is the Art Minds rotary cutter. If you have any rotary cutter, it makes it so much easier to get the straight lines when you're cutting the leather. And so I have that on hand. I also have my punches, and so I have 2 different punches. I have this one, which will make the holes to string the elastics through, and I also got this at Michael's. It actually comes in a set with all of these heads that all have different size holes, and so that's also at Michael's. And then I got these punches that you use to do the stitching. So these are the punches that create the holes that you can evenly stitch around. And I got these punches off of Amazon, and they come the 4 in the set. And I will try to leave all the links down below to all of these tools that I have. And of course you need elastic. I'm going to use white elastic. I got this one at Michael's. I believe this came in a TN, and I just kind of changed the elastic out, so I might use that for the closure. But this elastic I just bought at Michael's. You can get like a whole thing of it on Etsy. There's a bunch of sellers who sell like all the different colors. Michael's only sells black and white, and so if you want white or black, that's a good place to go, and you can use your coupon and everything like that. The last 2 things that you will need is a hammer or like a mallet to punch the tools through the leather. I don't have a mallet. A mallet might be better than this big old hammer that I have, but I have the hammer, and I'm just going to use what I have. And then lastly, you'll need some waxed thread. I think this is like a cotton linen waxed thread. Again, got it at Michael's. It's the Art Minds brand. So I'm using white, and then you'll need your needles. So I have this lovely curved needle, which is what I recommend if you're going to hand stitch your leather journal covers. I got this one off of the Leather Guy, and so I will definitely leave a link below to this particular needle. But I also have like a straight needle, because for the way that I'm going to show you how to stitch around like your cover, you're going to need 2 needles. And so yeah, I'm just working with what I have, which is a big eye needle. Yeah, I would suggest getting yourself a curved needle like this. And so those are all the tools and materials that you need to create your little TN. And so I am going to show you now how I cut my leather. So I already pre-cut it. This was in a 8x10 sheet, and I literally just cut it down to, I think, 6 by something. I don't remember. Almost 9 across and a little over 6 inches. What I did, because I don't measure anything, all I did was I took the pocket size TN that I already have and laid it down like this, kind of nicked off where I needed to cut and trim, and then I just cut it and trim it. What I had left over from cutting this piece was this, and so this I think is the perfect size for reinforced spine. It's an inch, actually. It's an inch exactly, so I'm going to put that right in the middle, but I'm going to of course put it on the back. And then for the pockets, I just kind of folded this in half. I try to find like the halfway mark on this, which I think is somewhere around there, and cut off this piece of leather so it doesn't go all the way, and then a smaller piece here so that when you stitch it up, it creates a little pocket, and then it'll create the big pocket back there. And this one I just did the same. Ideally I would have liked it this size, but I actually don't have leather in this color left that is that wide enough, so I'm just going to use this piece and it'll just work just fine. Again, I completely wing all of like my sizing and everything. I'm not very fussed about that. But yeah, so I suggest you just kind of lay everything out like this, make sure that you know how you want everything, and then we can start punching. And so what I'm probably going to do first is punch my pocket part. So for this pocket, the card pocket, I'm just going to take this one out again so you can see. We're going to just stitch this here. So this piece here needs to be stitched onto this piece. So we're going to stitch just this individually, just down this center. And then once we have that piece, we can then put it back on here. And when we're adding all the stitching around the actual cover, we will stitch it all up and it'll create the little pockets here. And I think that's the only one we have to do here because this one is just a straight stitch, so we'll do that when we're actually stitching everything together. And so I'm probably gonna go do that first and then come back and show you how to do the reinforced spine onto this. So this is the pocket here, and what I'm basically going to do, what you can do is just kind of fold one in half just to see where that middle crease is and then mark it, or you can just take your ruler and kind of size it. So it's about 6 inches. So in the middle of 6 inches is what? 3, right? It's about 3. So I just kind of press my nail right there and it'll mark up the leather. Usually most leathers mark up really, really well. And so that's basically what I do. And so that I know that I have to punch my holes there because that's where I want all the stitching to go. We're gonna take one of these little lacy punches and just punch from here to here. I don't know why I marked it up there because I'm really not punching straight through that way. I'm just punching from here to here, just basically this piece of leather. I'll give you an example. So I didn't sew through all of that. I just kind of sewed this piece onto this big piece, and so that's what we're going to do. I should also mention that you might want to do this on a sturdy surface. Sometimes I do it on the floor mostly, or definitely get yourself one of these craft mats. I believe this is a self-healing mat, so that way when you go to hammer things, you're not punching through your table or your floor or anything like that. But yeah, so I'm just gonna line it up and make sure that it's all, lined up the best that I can line it up. And then I am going to place this punch. So I'm using the punch with more edges only because you'll get more holes poked in at once. And I'm going to take my hammer and I'm just going to pound it. Now you want to make sure it goes through both pieces of leather, right? And then what I like about these is that you just put the last two, or like the last one, on in the hole that is already there, and so you can line it up perfectly and then just punch again. And so I like to see if this piece here actually punches through, and I'm just going to just kind of punch through all of this. So what I'm seeing here is I probably punched this too close to the edge here, but you know what? It's fine, I already did it. So yeah, so that is this. Next, we're going to take the needles and of course the thread, and we're actually going to sew this piece up. So this piece is going to be sewn up prior to like us sewing everything else. And so what I do is I just take my, my curved needle, and I just kind of put that through like that, and I think that should be enough here. Well, no, let's do it longer because I need a thread. I think that should be enough. I'm just eyeballing it. Just, make sure you have enough threaded through your needle. And so one end is going to have one needle, and then the other end is going to have the other needle. So you have something like that. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do a continuous back stitch. take this again, start on the back. This is really difficult to find these little holes on camera so you can see it, but so yeah, I'm starting on the second. So once you have that through, make sure that your threads are even length, and we're going to start our stitching and back stitching. So this is how we have it. We're going to start stitching forward with this. So once we have it through the first hole, we're then going to go use this one, this top thread, and go into the second hole. So that is our first stitch there. And what we're going to do, we're going to flip it and take our second string and needle, and we're going to go back through that second hole. And we're going to come out on the other side. This is really tricky to do on camera, but basically we're switching sides. So now this needle, my flat needle, is on the top, and my curved needle is on the bottom, like the string's coming out the bottom. And then we're going to take the top one and go through the third hole so that it is at the bottom. And then we're going to flip it and take the curved needle that I have here and go back through that third hole. So we're basically a back stitching. We're kind of like forward stitching and then going back in with the other part of the thread. This is so tricky. Don't you hate it when things are a lot harder to do on camera than they are when you're like just doing it for yourself? And so basically we're going to continue doing that same stitch until we get to the end. And so I'm probably going to finish off this stitch and come back and show you how to do the end. Finish it off camera and then come back and film me doing the end so you can see. So I'm just coming through the second to last hole here and making sure everything is good and flat and even, and I'm just going to go through it like I have been going through it. Now once you have this here, in order to secure the thread, we're actually going to do a back stitch over this stitch right here. And so I'm actually gonna put this needle through this hole here and go right back over that stitch. Just like that. And for good measure, I'm going to take this one. You can definitely tie a knot here and then that'll be done because that'll be basically hidden. But I like to do another stitch. So I would have to take this one. Let's switch these around. I would have to take this, the curved one, and go through that same hole that I just came up of. So this is where it gets like a little tricky, only because there's so many threads going through the same hole. And this is just to firmly like kind of close off those stitches there. And so in the back now we can do our little knot. And since this is going to be stitched on, this is going to be a pocket, no one's going to see any of those little stitches. So if I take my base back, line it up, that's how it will line up. So this will be a pocket here once we, stitch the whole thing, and then this will be a pocket here. and then this whole thing will be a big old pocket. So now I am going to show you how to do the reinforced spine. These guys will wait until we start stitching everything together, but we have to stitch this reinforced spine on first. So we have to flip it over and line it up so that it's even. So I'm going to try to get it as even as possible here. So like that is my center, apparently. So what I like to do here is I like to take a little bit of tacky glue, just a little bit of tacky glue, and basically glue my spine onto the front cover. I have just the, regular Eileen's tacky glue, and just a little bit. I don't like to do too much, so that should be fine, good enough. Then I'm just gonna basically glue this to the back. Lining it up the best I can. Make sure that it's even, it totally is. Okay, gonna leave that there. Now that is not secure, so don't expect the glue to securely secure that spine to your cover, because it won't. We're actually going to have to punch holes and stitch around this. So once that's in place, then we take our punches and we are going to make the holes that go all the way around the spine here. So I'm going to see, we don't want this to be that close to the edge. Again, like what happened with the pocket, if it's too close to the edge, it'll just like poke through when you put the needles in. So I'm not going to measure it, I'm going to eyeball it. I'm actually going to use this. Mine is not even, of course, but I don't know if that's 1/4 of an inch. Not even. It's like a 1/2 of an inch. But I'm just going to eyeball it then. And I'm basically gonna put this punch there into that hole and try my best to keep it straight and punch all the way around. So there are my holes. Hopefully they're all punched through well. I can always go through. The top I had to do a little shimmying around just to get it so I had some space. Again, I want to reiterate, these notebooks do not have to be perfect. They are never going to be perfect. So if you kind of make a mistake with spacing, it's completely fine, trust me. Like once you have it all stitched up and everything, literally nobody would notice, nor I don't think anybody would care either. Like literally no one's gonna notice but you, trust me. So I try not to be too picky with like the spacing, but again, these punches really help with that. Like this, I'm like that's not really lined up, but you know what? It's fine, it's fine. So once you have your holes, we're basically going to do the exact same stitch that we did here, except just all around. And so this time I'm probably gonna measure out because I did waste a lot of this thread. I'm going to measure out 1 and then 2, since it needs to go back in to that, 3 for this side, 4 since it needs to go back in, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to cut it right there. Hopefully that is enough for the spine. Watch it not be enough, but you know. So I basically doubled this side, double this side, double this, and double that. And again, putting my thread through this needle, and then this needle, and I'm going to start stitching exactly how I did the stitch before. So I'm going to start from the back here and go through that first hole, and I think I'm going to stitch this way so that way I get like the top secure, making sure my threads are even. Then I'm going to go back into this. And so I will say making a little TN like this is pretty time consuming, only because of the stitching. I do want to mention right here when it comes to the stitch, to make sure that you're stitching the same way. So I did those stitches with this back string on the bottom, like kind of pull down here, and then this one going over it like that. And I only mention this so that you see how the direction of the stitch is going. That's because I'm stitching in that same way. So I'm putting this through the hole here, and I'm holding it down and pulling this over instead of holding this up and pulling this under. Do you see? So either way is fine, but make sure that you are consistent when you're stitching it straight through so that on the front it looks all nice and even. Okay, so I got about a little over halfway through, and this is not going to be enough string. I kind of jinxed that. I said it, didn't I? So I guess when you do those measurements, so 2, 2, 2, 2, 4, like this length, and then for this length to double that, and that'll be enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch it off, sort of like how we ended this one, and then I'm going to start new with some new thread. So that it's like that, and then I'm just going to kind of knot it off here. Kind of pressing it down. Good thing about waxed thread is that it should just stay down like that. And so basically I'm going to have to start the stitch over again here. So, and now I'm just going to start over. Now I'm going to start over in that hole there. So this first one here, let's see if this one will go through. This first one, so that the stitch looks like it's seamless. So I'm going to start off there. Okay, so I'm coming towards the end of the spine stitching here, and we're basically going to finish it off the exact same way that we've been finishing off everything else. We're just going to go over some stitches. So this is my last hole here. So that is the last hole. So I'm going to go back into this first hole just to combine the stitch. And I'm going to go over these original stitches that I first started out with. And I only do this to secure the strings. So we're going to tie it off anyway at the end, but in case that ever comes loose, it's going to be really hard for the whole thing to unravel because you kind of went over those stitches, and since this is like a wax thread, it all kind of just sticks together. So I just personally like going this extra step here. You can definitely just tie it off whenever you want to tie it off, but and not do this, but I like doing this. And just kind of press that down like that. And there you go. You have your reinforced spine. It just makes everything a bit more sturdy. Now I just gotta see which one I want to be my front cover and which one do I want to be my back. I think I want to keep that bit on the bottom there, so I'm gonna do it like this. And now I have to reposition all of my little inside bits for the last part of this process. So now what we're going to do next is basically sew around the whole entire book. So I'm going to get my thing again because I'm going to need to punch some holes. And so what I mean by that is this. This is my B6 Slim. We're gonna stitch all of this. Now my stitching is wonky here, as you can see, but this is when we adhere all of the pockets to the inside cover. And so this is, it doesn't get tricky, it's not tricky, it's just, it just takes a lot more force, I guess, to go through all the layers of leather when you're stitching up everything. So this part, like this section, like all of this is going to be tough, and then this is going to be tough, but like this is going to be just as tough as having this down, but this will be really easy to stitch. And again, it's just really time consuming. So what I'm probably going to do first is I'm probably going to flip this back over and punch my holes around here. I think that's what I'm going to do, is punch my holes. And I believe when I did this one with the reinforced spine, I did sew over the stitching that I did here. So I'm going to try my best to line it up accordingly, my stamp. So I might start here and line it up and just punch holes all the way around. And then I'm going to kind of put this down like this. I'm going to punch the holes here first, but then I'm going to put this down here and then re-punch through so that these guys can get the same stitching through to the other side. I hope that makes sense. So first I'm going to punch my holes. Alright, so I have all of it punched. Now is the tricky part. Is starting to punch these guys so that they line up well with this. So now to figure out where I want my cover to be. I think I originally said I wanted this to be on the bottom, but you know what? This looks much straighter than this side, and this side actually doesn't look that bad. But I think this is going to be my new cover now, so I'm going to do it like that. This has to go back down here. Now I'm going to punch through the cover and then that pocket part. these kind of look a little bit off. So I'm gonna just leave it that way and sort of, I guess, fix it when I'm actually stitching through that. So that is that side done. We're gonna do the exact same thing on this side through multiple layers, 3 layers of leather here. So we're gonna have to apply more force to this one. But again, I'm just gonna do the exact same. I'm gonna try my best to line this up so that it's like even. Okay, so this is where it gets really, really tricky. I'm basically just gonna have to wing it. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and start kind of stamping through these pieces the best that I can. And when we go stitch it, it should line up because we're gonna be stitching through these holes to match up with those holes, even though they don't exactly match. But I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna wing it. This is how we had everything, right? So we're just gonna line it up. And now this next part is literally to stitch, and this part takes forever. This is really easy. We're literally just stitching, but when we go to stitch through here, we're just gonna stitch through these pieces and basically try to line up the holes that are punched on this side to the holes that are punched on this side. And so it takes a lot of focus when we do these parts, and even if they don't exactly line up, if we get them close to lining up, the minute that we kind of pull the thread, you know, like tightly, it's going to line up. So if you look at my thing here, these leather pieces did not line up on the edge. You see this here? So it's going to be imperfect like that because we're trying to meet up all of those different layers of leather together. So I have a few like little gaps in the leather. Some leather sticks out further than others, but that's just gonna happen. So it's a handmade thing. You're doing it by hand and not with a machine, and so it's just gonna happen. But just try to, you know, thread through all the holes as close and as best as you can. So now here, I'm probably just gonna use the whole thing because I always underestimate how much thread I'm going to need. And it's the same exact stitch, so we're gonna stitch exactly how we've been stitching for the spine and everything. So this is how long this is, right? That's 1. So I'm gonna do 2, 3, 4 is double. Then I'm gonna add 5. You know, I'm gonna do 6, just to be on the safe side, so I don't have to replace the thread. So I did it, you know, 4 times the entire, I measured this from corner to corner like that, and then I did this 4 times and then added 2. So hopefully that is enough thread. and we're going to thread the needles the exact same way, one on one end and the other on the other end. Okay, so I have my string, and I am going to start over here somewhere. Maybe over here, because I don't want to go over this knot again, and do this one first. And I want to do this pocket first because it's the more complex one. It's the one that I have to go through 3 layers of leather, and so I kind of want to get that out of the way first and then do this one, which should be pretty simple enough, like the spine here. And so I'm just gonna start off my stitch the same way we've been starting the stitches off. So I'm gonna move that aside because I don't need that. I'm gonna start over here. So going forward now, I have to make sure that I go through all the layers of leather. So that's it's just gonna be a little tricky. You just have to pay attention. Make sure you don't get any mis-stitching. I've gotten a few mis-stitched and I had to like undo the stitch. It's just a pain, especially in this process, which is really time consuming. Okay, so I have stitched through enough of the holes around the front pocket here. So now you can see there's a little tuck pocket there, there's a little tuck pocket there, and then this one back here is a huge pocket. And so now I'm working my way onto this side, and so I have to prepare this piece to be sewn in. But I just kind of wanted to show you how this does look uneven when you close it. So what I'm probably going to do is, once I have everything stitched up, I'm probably just going to take my rotary cutter and I'm just going to kind of slice off that little bit that's poking out. And that's because when we poke the holes, like I said, the holes, like the leather is not going to line up completely perfect, and so I just did my best, and there is some little overhang, and so I'm just going to take the rotary cutter and just snip it off. But I wanted to continue. I have to grab this piece now because I have to prepare this piece to be sewn onto the cover. And so far so good. So far the front cover is looking pretty decent. This is just, like I said before, a really time-consuming process. That's like, if you're gonna do hand stitching, make sure you have the time, put on a movie or something, and just sit there and just kind of stitch it, 'cause that's what I've been doing. I've been coming on camera, showing you like where I am stepwise, and then just retreating to do this while I watch a movie. But this is like really simple. Once you get the hang of the stitching, it's like something that you can do, like I said, when you're watching a television show or a movie or something like that. It's like it goes by quickly, the time, and before you know it, you have like the whole thing stitched. But it's just, you know, really time consuming. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and finish this off camera, and then I'll come back when I get towards the end here and show you how I finish the stitch off. Honestly, it's basically the same way as we've been finishing off all the stitches. It's doing the back stitch and everything, but I will still come on and show you that. Okay, so I am back. I am close to the end here. I've got a few more stitches to do before I get to like the end part. So that's about it. So I'm going to connect these guys together and then of course go over it a few times just to do that sort of reinforced stitch. This is the first reinforced stitch. I think I'm going to do 2. Going through here again because this is where we have like that other reinforced stitch, so I don't want to go over that, so I'll just do this one. So that is the finished TN. There's a pocket here, a pocket here, and then of course the 2 little card pockets. And this was the only place that I saw that the leather was kind of uneven. So I am just gonna see if I can cut off the excess a little bit. I think that one is fine. So yeah, that is the finished stitching on the TN here. And so the last part of this is to punch the holes for the elastics and string the elastics. And so for that part, I'm going to need my mat again, this tool that punches the little holes, and then of course my very loud clunky hammer. And I'm going to try to place this as evenly as possible on the spine here. So let's see, if I do end to end, I need to find the center, or like close to center. This is not exactly 6 inches. It's a little less, but I think the center, if I'm eyeballing it correctly, is about here. Right? That seems about right. I think that's about right. It's about that, like that right there, maybe a little up. Right? Does that look even? Yeah, I think that's about as close to center as I can get it. So it just looks really odd from this angle, but I believe that is center. And so I'm just gonna place this here and then just take my hammer and hammer it. So there goes one hole. Now I have to do that same process to get 2 holes, and 2 holes down here to string the thread through. Got all my holes, and so now I can string the elastics through. And I think I'm going to use this one. It's already like tied, and I'm going to actually take some string and do this and put it through here, because I think this one is big enough to go around this TN like that. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can find a much shorter elastic than that. I have this one that may work. This TN obviously can fit a lot more books in here. And that's it. So here is the little pocket TN here. The stitching in some places is a little rough, but that is expected for a hand-stitched notebook. Open it up. We have the pockets here, so we have the two little pockets here, and then we have this big one, and then in the back we also have another big pocket. And this actually fits. I probably could jump string this third notebook here, and look at that, like, it just fits. It fits perfectly here, so I might actually do that. Got that little gray one that will be perfect to jump this notebook. So now I have all three notebooks in here, and they fit perfectly in here. And the elastic goes like that, and there we go. There's enough space. There's plenty of space. My goodness, there's plenty of space for another notebook, or like if you want to put little papers in here. There's plenty of space for that, and it's just a tiny, cute little pocket traveler's notebook. I really hope that this tutorial was simple to follow. It seems really complicated. Realistically, it's not. It's just once you figure out the stitching, once you get the stitching down and get used to the stitching, it just goes a lot easier. I think it's the stitching that seems a little bit overwhelming, and maybe trying to like piece together all of these things, but it's really simple and cost effective. Like when you go and check out the leather prices at the Leather Guy, and to see how much a piece of leather is to make a notebook, it is so much cheaper than buying an actual notebook from like Chic Sparrow or Foxy Fix or wherever you get your leather traveler's notebooks. And you get to pick the colors. You get to pick the pocket configuration, and you get to make it yourself. And I think that's really special. I love making journals. You know, love making all sorts of journals, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a personal touch when you make your own journal yourself. So yeah, I really hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and like watching along and maybe creating your own journal. I would love to see any TNs that you make out of leather. I would love to see that if you follow along this tutorial. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye!